Hello, this is welcome to Speech Talk Live. This is episode 11. My name is Jay Oza. I'm the host of Speech Talk Live, and today I have two co-hosts who have joined us, Julie Finkelstein and Lathesh Balakrishna, and they'll introduce themselves once I'm done with my intro here. So, one of the things that I do is I mentor this course called Introduction to Public Speaking. It's a Coursera course that's offered on their on-demand platform. And we help students with their public speaking, helping them with their public speaking skills. But the other thing we also do is we do this show called Speech Talk Live. And here we talk about speech-related issues. And also we review speeches. It gives people a chance to get a feedback if they're going to give a speech in front of a live audience. And here they get a chance to get feedback so that they know what they need to do to make it better. And the third thing we do is we review a famous speech and use that as a way to learn what they did well and what we should try to copy or avoid, depending on what they've done. So the purpose of this Speech Talk Live are three things, as I said. To learn, we are all learning because speeches are all different. Nobody gives the same speech to the same audience all the time. So there's always something that we can all learn when it comes to speaking. Second is teach. We get to teach others because some of us have done it once or twice or even many times. So there are things that we can teach others, and that's another way of learning, by the way. The third thing is sharing. Today, if you want to be a leader in anything, you have to share. That's the reality because of the social media. And we share our speeches, whether it's a speech or some particular methodology or an idea that could help others, we use this show to share that. And one of the things I really highly recommend people is get used to sharing, because if you're not sharing, then you're not likely to lead. And the fourth thing is to support. This is the place you come to where we support each other so that when you go out and give a speech in front of others, you will be confident because you will get all the feedback that you need and you will have practiced it. So that's basically the show. Today we're going to do three things. The segment one, and again, this comes back to sharing. I'm going to share a methodology that I think is effective, and we'll have a discussion around it and see what others think on how do you actually create a speech. You know, we always hear about people talking about public speaking, but nobody tells you what the right methodology is. And I'm taking some concepts from lean manufacturing, lean startup, and I'm trying to apply that. Can that be used in crafting a speech? So we'll see. I'll give you my methodology, and I'll have Julie and Lathesh give their opinions on what they think, if this is something useful or not. The second segment is, again, goes back to sharing. Julie has kindly shared one of her speech that she's been working on it for quite some time, and it's gotten to the point where I feel that she needs to get some feedback rather than keep on trying to make it better. And this will give her an opportunity to drive the process to see what specific feedback she's looking for, and then we can provide based on what we think that she's done well and what are some of the areas that she may want to consider that might make it better next time when she gives it in front of a live audience. And third, we're going to review one of the famous speakers, Brene Brown. She did a TED Talk that was really well received. This is not a TED Talk. This is a talk she did at 99U about critics. And I like the speech. I like the way she gives the speech. The content is really good, and the way she delivers it, it's very good. It's a very conversational way that she speaks. I really like it. So we're going to review that and see what are the things that we can take away from that. So that's basically the show. At this point, I will turn it to Julie and Lathesh so they can introduce themselves, and then we'll get started. One other thing, in between the segment one, we're going to have Lathesh give an update on a speech that we reviewed, I believe, a few segments ago on stage gates. And we gave him our feedback at that time, and I believe at that time he said that speech was going to be given a few weeks later. Now that he has given it, this will be our chance to learn from him what went well and what he could do better next time. So Lathesh would like to hear about that. We'll give you like 10 minutes to talk about that. Okay, at this point, Julie, take over.
Oh, thanks, Jay. Hi, Lathesh, and a remote hello to Somin. He joined us, and he wasn't able to stay. So a quick introduction of myself. My name is Julie, and I moved recently from Chicago to Stanford, and I'm a fellow student and a mentor, and I host this Google community group called Introduction to Public Speaking, which is associated with this course, and I have class notes and other resources such as how to overcome fear and body languages. So many of them are provided by fellow students and mentors. Fellow students and mentors such as Somian, Jay, and myself. So right now, one of the students is wanting to start an event. So please join that community and find out more. Thanks, Jay. I'll turn it back over to you. Or to Lathesh.
Yeah, Lathesh.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lathesh Balakrishnan. I'm based out from India, and specifically from Kochi, which is in the southern part of India. I work in the IT industry as a project manager, and my hobbies are like running fitness-related activities, reading, and being updated of the current trends. I use this platform to improve my public speaking skills, and I get plenty of opportunities to keep improvising and being comfortable talking in the public domain. The team here has been very helpful with good constructive feedback. In fact, I would be sharing one of the sessions that I had taken in some time because of the feedback that I had received from the team. It had tremendously improved my confidence while giving this talk. Thank you, everyone. Back to Jay.
Okay, Lathesh, thanks a lot, and I'm looking forward to that. We're going to take a short break, and then we'll move to segment one, okay? Okay, welcome to Speech Talk Live. We're moving to segment one. And in this segment, I'm going to share a methodology that I use on how to develop a speech. And the reason I've created this is that people, when they take a course like public speaking, they kind of get overwhelmed because they don't know exactly how to start. And then they record a formal speech, and then they hardly ever get a chance to ever give that speech. And because of that, they give up and they just don't improve. So I was thinking about there has to be something that would allow you to create a speech and keep practicing it, right? So how do you do that? So I call this methodology the lean speech approach, a lean speech methodology. So let me explain what lean is. Lean is a technique or manufacturing process that tries to remove the waste. It's something that the Japanese pioneered with the Toyota production system. Since then, lean has become very popular in the startup movement on how to incrementally and iteratively develop a product. So the concept is pretty easy to understand. How do we apply it to a speech? You know, rather than just recording a 15-minute speech, kind of incrementally and iteratively develop it. So the way I have, what I've done before this show is I've recorded this speech, and there's been some confusion, like how does that fit in? That's like the final product, okay? It could be like 7 to 10 minute or maybe 15 to 20 minute. That would be a formal speech. So I would use that as a way to refer to somebody. But the question is, how do I get to that point? Okay, so this particular speech that I have recorded is on investment. So let's say if Julie and Lathesh and we're at a cocktail party or something where we're just Julie brings up investment, saying, "Hey guys, I have this investment idea. This is how I'm investing in this stock, or maybe a startup that I'm investing in." And at that point, it's my opportunity, since I've already been thinking about this topic, how do I elevate this conversation? Either I could be in a listen mode, or I could take it to the next level and share something that I've been thinking about. So that's the one word. So investment obviously is a topic that people are interested in, based on, otherwise, people would leave. So at that point, I would then move to the next level to see if anything that I'm about to share is something that's of interest to others. So I could say something like this. Hey, Julie and Lathesh, the best investment that I've found are those that follow simple rules. Now that's my 6 seconds. I've just taken that topic, that one word, investment, and I brought it to the next level, which is a 6 second. I don't want to go beyond that at this point because I have no idea whether you two are even interested in this topic, okay? And let's say at this point I'm kind of saying it's up to you, right? Because I have to listen, right? And if you say, yeah, that's interesting, can you elaborate further? So that 6 second was that the best investment are those that follow simple rules. It's very general and it's broad enough so that if you have listened to that, you should be curious at that point, saying, hey, give me some idea. What do you think? Tell me more about it. So now from 6 seconds, I now move to 30 seconds, and I have to have these ready. Otherwise, I'm going to look kind of like I'm not going to be able to elevate this conversation. So as you can see how this is going to move, right? And at the 30 second, I can say, oh yeah, sure. So I can then move to my 30-second pitch. I say, I tell people that if you can't explain your investment strategy to your grandmother, then you're likely to do poorly. My theory is to keep it simple. For example, I invest in the S&P 500 index fund, which is a basket containing stocks of the top 500 publicly traded companies in the United States. And let's face it, no one can predict the future, so I prefer to bet on a basket full of stocks tracking the economy, but easily you could track a particular industry sector that you like, such as technology, pharmaceutical, etc., rather than investing in individual companies where the risk is very high. Now, I'm not sure whether that was 30 seconds or not, but that's enough. At that point, I'm done. I don't want to keep going on and on because I have no idea at this point you're interested. But all of these things that I'm going from one word to 6 seconds to 30 seconds is something that I've already thought about. I'm not just kind of winging it, right? And part of this is that I want to get to the 3-minute mark. The 3-minute mark is where I am now going to take that and give it to you in a 3-minute informal talk if you are interested. And I'm not going to do it here because I've already recorded that speech. That wasn't the 3-minute speech, but I could take that speech and condense it to 3 minutes to give you the main idea of that speech. So at that point, what I'm doing are kind of 3 things, actually. One is that in a conversation, I am elevating the conversation rather than just talking about contextual stuff like, hey, what do you think of this hangout? After a while, that gets kind of boring. So one is to elevate the conversation because people out there want to learn something new. Okay, they want to learn something different. Second is it allows me to practice my public speaking. Now, you're not going to invite me to give a formal 5-minute, 7-minute, or even a 10, 15, 20-minute TED-like talk. So this is my way of practicing my speech in this 3-minute informal talk with that I can do that one-on-one. I can do it with all 3 of you in this at a meeting or on this hangout. And the third thing it allows me to do is it also allows me to promote this idea that I have on investment. So that speech that I included was my recording. So if you, let's say, after 3 minutes saying, that's a very, at this point, I don't want to say anything more because I've already taken too much time, because after a while you don't want to talk more, you want to listen, right? And then I can leave the conversation at that point, because I made my point, right? At this point, I don't want to add anything more. I can say, by the way, guys, if you want to know more, I have this recording that you can take a look at and give me your feedback, what you think. So what this is allowing me to do is I'm kind of taking the initiative here where I am coming across like a thought leader, because I have a thought, right? I've thought about this, and I'm also bringing I'm elevating the conversation because there is some interest that you guys have expressed on this topic, since it's the topic that we're talking about. But it's also allowing me to practice, and unless you're practicing this type of speech, you just cannot improve. And one of the faults that I see, not faults, but problems that I see that people are struggle when it comes to public speaking when they take a course like Intro to Public Speaking is, yes, they do give a formal speech, but then they cannot take that formal speech and deploy it with individuals in an informal way. And that's what I'm trying to get to, that you have to, if Julie, for example, when she did her meditation talk, she needs a 3-minute talk that whenever she meets people, she should be able to take that talk and be able to condense it into 3 minutes. And if after that they're interested, she can then say, hey, by the way, if you want to know more about this speech, I have this recording on YouTube you can take a look at, and then we can have a follow-up discussion. So she's coming across as a thought leader. She can then also promote herself, and she's also practicing her speech. So that's the whole idea of this lean methodology that I'm introducing here. So at this point, I'll stop and just have you guys give your thought on what you think of this. Yeah, Julie, go ahead.
Yeah, and this is really brilliant. I really appreciate that. I'm going to try to integrate that somehow, because one of my challenges is I do very well in group settings like this where it's structured, but to throw me in the ocean of a group, I don't know how to get started. So now I kind of get this idea is, let's say the meditation thing, I could segment an idea and kind of say, hey, meditation is going to help you whether you want to succeed or whether you want to improve your relationships or health, and then they can come on. It sounds like similar to the segment that you did on the elevator speech. It's almost like, you had mentioned in our discussions, you had mentioned that the idea of having a basket of things, so it's almost like a component design. You have this component, that component, and then you can combine them, and I call that plug and play in my life. And it sounds like one of the plug and play components can be something you're really passionate about, or something you really want to get your message across. And I like the idea, the synergy of doing something and, 3 bangs for the buck kind of thing. You come across as a thought leader, you're promoting an idea, and you're practicing a refinement. So I think that's really great. I'm going to throw out the idea that perhaps in another week, you might like to do a role play on this. So thank you very much. I love it.
Yeah, thanks, thanks, Julie. Yeah, you're right. It is an elevator. The thing is that, like a stepwise approach. Like a lot of people don't know how do you actually get into, because when you look at this, the reason I created this is because I'm trying to figure out, like, okay, I have a lot to say, but when do I say it? You all have a lot to say, right? But nobody's going to say, hey guys, today I want to talk about Wikipedia, but I'm not interested in Wikipedia. Why do I want to listen to you? So what I'm saying is that you have to have, like you said, since we're using the word basket full of speeches, right? Because you're just one person and you have all these basket full of speeches, and you have to prepare them so that when you are in a conversation, because it's going to start with maybe one-on-one interaction or an interaction at an event you're attending, informal, because most speeches are informal that you give, right? All of them are mostly informal. And then, of course, with Lathesh, he got to give a formal speech. But to get to that formal speech, it's a long process, unless you're giving that same formal speech over and over again to different or entities. Otherwise, the only way you're going to be able to practice is if you read a book, or if you have an experience, or if you have a story, then you're going to have informal setting where you're going to bring this up and see where it goes. And part of the other thing is that you're also listening. So you know immediately when you're talking informally how well other people are receiving it. And so you're doing several things here. It's making you much more active, that every opportunity is an opportunity in practicing your speaking. It's not, as speaking is, I like to think of it as, there's no such thing as public speaking. It's speaking. It's good speaking, bad speaking, and no speaking, right? And this way you can get the feedback. Now, people are not going to give you a feedback. You just have to sense it. So before you do your 3-minute, you have to see what worked, what didn't work, and then keep tweaking it. So anyway, Lathesh and Soumyan, do you have any ideas on this?
Yes. So Jay, from the 1 word to 3-minute talk, I really like the way in which the flow actually in one of the videos that you had presented, right, for investment purpose, how we can do it. So I actually enjoyed this particular the talk which you gave. And what is important is like here when we want to explain some small concept to an audience, and we want to make sure that it is very simple. So keep it simple is one technique definitely that helps to drive the point across. And when we say that when we are talking in terms of growing from one particular word to to a time frame, maybe 30 seconds, 60 seconds, a minute, 2, 3. So I would compare it like the story. I do not know if you are aware of this. It's an old legend called Rakta Beach. So it's like in the Hindu Vedas, in the Hindu mythology, there was this demon called Rakta Beach. And in that, the demon had this capability, or rather, he was given that kind of blessing, wherein like every drop of blood, if somebody is like injuring him or anything like that, any drop of blood that falls from his body will give rise to another person, another Raktabis, and another person himself. So if 2 drops fall, then there will be 2 Raktabis. 3, then there will be 3. So it keeps growing. I mean, the way he was killed is like Goddess Kali took form, and she actually, she didn't allow any blood to get into the ground, and that's how she killed it. That's a different thing. But that's how our the progression should happen. From a particular single word, we are giving birth to another one and the next one. So there is a chain of thought process, and based on the time frame that you want to limit that thought process, that is up to you how you want to put the point across to the audience and limit it as per whatever is the time frame available. So that's my take, and I think Jay, the concepts that you had provided in this was quite good, and it was reaching across within that time frame. That's from me. Thanks.
Great. Soumyan?
Yeah, I had a few points which I had noted down. One is I also felt the same way, that this is more like an elevator pitch that you want to give. So a longer talk can be attractive to the consumer. Then second is, I think you are also trying to create, in terms of push and pull. If you look at it, you don't want to push the whole talk. You want to push only an introduction, and then the rest of it to be pulled by the consumer. Okay, so that's another way I'm looking at it. In terms of, I mean, that's one point about the overall concept that you are talking of. Then I wanted to give some feedback to you about the video production and related thing itself. I think the way you are now looking, in this screen right now, the way I am looking at you, you're visible to me from the tabletop onwards right up to the head. I think you perhaps are much better in this mode, in this frame, rather than standing back. So when you are standing back, you look a little much more smaller in the overall frame. And I think you do show a lot of facial expression which conveys a seriousness, etc. And you will be better off in this mode in many of your talks, is one thought I had. You can experiment with that. So that's one part of it. Then I felt that I also had had a lot of investment related advice. I was in Gujarat for some 8 years. So in Gujarat, everybody will talk about stocks. Helper boy who is sitting outside our office, errand boy practically, he would be, in his spare time, he will be reading the newspaper, looking at the stock prices, and then apparently he does buying and selling. Okay, so that's the kind of community we have in Gujarat, and it's a very vibrant stock investors community. Despite being there, I never really picked up this stock-related thing at all. So, I'm just saying this because when you say something for 6 minutes or 9 minutes later, I would like this to be addressed. If I want to watch your talk, I would like to see the kind of answer to these questions that I have in my mind. No, I'm not asking for them now. One is, stocks are actually meant for action-oriented people. The example you narrated in your video, where somebody had to be cajoled a many number of times, and then he ultimately, when he went to buy it, it was perhaps in the downward trend. So stocks are transient things. Then if somebody is urging you to buy that, if you are going to buy, you must buy immediately. There's no point in buying 1 month later, because 1 month later that advice may not be valid at all. Okay, that's one thought. Second is, I think with so much of analysis, computers, etc. coming in, there is very little point in buying anything based on this kind of analysis, the way it appeared to be. People used to go by market information earlier. Now I think market information is very heavily getting into analysis. So in this analytical age, I wonder whether any decision, which is going to be, any difference is going to be possible. Typically, I hear one comment that you make money in the stock market only based on information asymmetry. That is, something others don't know, the rest of the world doesn't know. You are privy to some kind of an insight which comes to you ahead of the market. So in that case, you can take advantage of it and either buy or sell before the market. So if you are going to get the information after everybody has got it analyzed thoroughly, there is hardly any money to be made in that. Okay, so that's a thought I had. So these are the things for which I would like to have some kind of understanding from your talk on investment. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, those are excellent points there. Yeah. So that's exactly the thing. So what Saumin just did is exactly what would happen, right? If I had that informal talk with him, I give him a 3-minute pitch, and he would say, well, these are the kind of questions I would like to know. And what I could then do is take those points and turn it into a formal 15-minute to 20-minute talk, so that speech is essentially addressing some of the questions that he just raised. And that's the whole point of this exercise, right? That the elevator pitch isn't just, the elevator pitch is very static, right? This is more dynamic. That's what I think the difference is. That yes, in a way it's an elevator pitch. There are some similarities because based on the timing, but the purpose of this is a little different. An elevator pitch is like you're kind of pushing your agenda on somebody, right? This is almost like you're pushing it to extract certain information to see that when you get to a longer speech, whether that's going to resonate with your audience, so that when you get in front of an audience, you have already gotten a pretty good feedback. Because let's face it, we're pretty good at giving feedback because we know how to do it. Other people are not. They're just not going to give you feedback. So this also becomes a feedback mechanism. It's your ability to get feedback from others without asking them for the feedback. So before we close this out, and any last thoughts? One thing I want to say before we close this out, you got to practice this. This is not simple. This requires a lot of work. But if you do it, I think you'll find it that you'll become a much sharper a speaker, because I do this all the time. Okay, so to just give you an example, I went to my dentist the other day, and I brought up something. I always think that before you talk to somebody, bring something to elevate the conversation. So I brought up that thing about, remember that dentist who killed a lion in Zimbabwe, right? I don't know if you guys know about that. He killed that Cecil the lion in Zimbabwe. So I said to his name is Dr. Levine, I said, Dr. Levine, so how was your hunting trip? You're back from your hunting trip. In the beginning, he didn't get it, but then he did get it. He was like, he was then, throughout the whole thing while he was doing my teeth, he was just talking about that, right? I didn't have to say anything after that. And then he was asking me, did you think about that before coming, or did you just, I said, no, doctor, I actually thought of it just before you were entering the room. I said, I have to come up with something that would get you to think about something different rather than just working on my teeth. So, I mean, that was just, so let's close this out. Julie and Lathesh and Somin, any closing thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think that your point about getting information without asking for information is very insightful and creative. So I'll take that back and think about that. Thank you.
Lathesh?
I think driving home a point within a very short time frame, especially like 2 to 3 minutes, or doing an elevator speech requires a lot of practice. And it is not something that will come, it's not impossible, but it should come naturally and it will come with practice. So that's about it. Thanks.
And Somin?
Yeah, that's a very interesting point of view, Jay. I think I will try to put it to practice. I also often find that I give long monologues when the other party is apparently not quite interested. Other bystanders often tell me that I spoke a little too long without ascertaining the interest of the other guy. So I think it's a very relevant input that you gave me. It's a food for thought. Thank you.
Yeah, because my daughter does that to me all the time, and she just is pretty rude to me too sometimes. Dad, you're talking too long. I'm like, okay, I'll shut up. All right, so at this point I'm going to take a quick pause, and then we'll have Lathesh give his update on the speech that he gave on the stage gates. Okay, welcome to Speech Talk Live. And at this point, we're going to get an update from one of a speaker who actually, his name is Lathesh, he's here, and he had asked us to review a speech that he was going to give to a live audience, about 100 people, or maybe he'll tell us exactly how many people he gave it to. And he's going to tell us how the feedback we gave him helped and what his overall experience was, before, after, and how he thinks, what are some of the things that he thinks he can do better next time. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Lathesh to give us an update just from the beginning, like when you were working on your speech, and then when you actually gave it, and what are some of the things you learned from the feedback we gave you, and then after you gave it, now that you have time to reflect on it, what are some of the things you think you learned from it that you can do better next time? Okay, Lathesh, so why don't you take it over?
Yeah, thanks, Jay. See, by my personality, by my nature, I am kind of a person who would do most of the stuff like in a driving mode, and I like to talk. I like to really, be more of a conversational person. But when it comes to doing public speaking, especially when you are talking to a larger audience, I used to find it to be a bit challenging. And whenever I had to give a talk, I remember the last time when I was asked to give a talk in front of about 50 to 100 people, I was literally nervous and I was sweating, and it was quite difficult because I was losing my words and my thought process, and I was not able to come up with a structured thought process while giving the speech. So that's where I thought like I need to really improve this, and fortunately, by chance I could get into this public forum, this particular speech forum, and I think it's a part of a Coursera program. So I was lucky to get into this particular platform with Jay, Soumyan, and Julie. And in fact, if there were more people, I would have got more feedback. But was lucky enough to get a lot of feedback and improvement areas. So my topic, which was more of an informative topic because it's like a project management specific technique called stage gating. So I had already worked on this particular process, and I am an expert. I already have worked about 6 months in that particular area. but to put it across to a large audience, it required some kind of delivery methodology, some kind of a process by which I can ensure that it goes to the audience in a proper format, and that I'm not stuck with my nervousness, etc. So from that angle, I prepared a small 15 minutes talk, and I shared it with the team here, and they gave very constructive feedback, especially how to talk to audience when it is an informative talk. I remember a lot of points given by Soumya, Jay, Julie, to come up with how I can structure it more, put it in a way that involve more of storytelling, put some humor in here and there throughout the talk, because it's a dry subject, and you need to, it's more of a pull method. You need to get the audience to buy that idea. So here in this particular talk, my audience was based out from multiple locations. There were some team which was based from Trivandrum, and I was doing a video conferencing, and the total number of the audience would be somewhere around 80 members. So it had a mix of people who were no experience. They were like beginner who didn't have any idea about the stage gates methodology, the topic that I was giving on, and there were people who had really, they were expert and they had been doing it for a couple of years. So I had to go from the lowest level to the highest level. So with the kind of feedback which I had received from the team here, I was able to do it. I think I did justice. I was confident. My thinking process was very structured, and I was able to put it across in a very strong way. And my body language was good, because when I came out from the session, my team members told me like, you're pretty confident. My eye contact was good, and overall, I could feel myself that I had improved, in all these areas. So I would really, I would say that it's been a great help that you guys are doing with this particular exercise, this particular platform. It has really improved. If I look back and I see where I have come all the way, I definitely see a lot of changes, a lot of positive improvements in myself with respect to my public speaking, my confidence level, my body language, my personality. Everything has improved. So thanks a lot, team.
That's excellent. Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah, we should be congratulated. So we have our first testimonial. I'll put this on the Coursera platform so that people will understand on how, like, if they have to give a live speech, how this can help them. Because that's the whole purpose, that by recording it, and we asked you to record like a 15-minute, I think, right? I think your speech here was probably more like 45 minutes, I believe. 45 minutes, right? 45 minutes to an hour. Before we close it out, let me see if Julie and Soumya have any questions regarding the speech. Julie?
Yeah, as you know, I was part of participant when you were doing the speech. So I'm just really, really happy for you. What do you think are the next steps for you in your public speaking career?
Lathesh? Next steps.
Yes. So going ahead from here, I want to probably get into, because this was an informative talk. So next would be more of different methods of talking, different types of topics, right from like a 3 minutes talk on a particular subject, or it could be a debate wherein there could be some conflicting ideas, etc. So I want to get into a level wherein I would be comfortable giving impromptu speech, any topic thrown across to me in any area. Even though I am not an expert in that area, I should be able to come up with, because I have seen some of my colleagues who were like really good, and they can actually come up with some wild thought can be put across in a very structured manner, and they are able to really do justice to that particular topic. So I see that probably I will grow into that kind of a mode where in anything impromptu given for discussion, I would be able to scale up and bring some ideas there. Thanks.
Excellent. Soumya?
Yeah, in talks of this nature, where the audience consists of a few experts who know a lot more than the average person there, and many people are newbies, I think there is a big challenge. On one end, you can find people who are very well versed with the topic, they can find it boring. They may get tuned out. On the other side, if you try to elevate the level for to address these people's interests, you will find a lot of newbies who don't really get to understand that level of high level of talk. So you will have to play a lower level talk only. So it's quite likely that you will find fewer experts and more who need to learn. So a talk of this nature, particularly if it's an informative talk, has to address those who don't know, and if those who know find it a little boring, that's that's unfortunate. That can't be helped. So, but then that's the way we have to skew our pitch. Okay, so that's what I felt. Otherwise, often this kind of situations can appear to be a conflict. In reality, there is no conflict. We definitely have to do a informative talk to those who don't know. That's the way I felt it. Thank you.
Yeah. So again, Lathesh, congratulations, and keep practicing. And again, now you have given a speech in front of a live audience and gotten some real feedback. You can just now take it to the next level and see what are some of the things that you can do to make it even better next time. So again, excellent update. And at this point, we're going to take a quick break. Do you have any closing thoughts, Lathesh, before we move to the next segment?
I think this platform provides me the right level of experience. The talks, it revolves around some topics which we come prepared. And when we are talking to a live audience, we get a lot of energies, whether it is tangible, intangible, a lot of benefits that comes across. So it would be great if we have more team members also coming with some different backgrounds, sharing some new insights, etc. But otherwise, it's perfect. The way that we are doing, it's really good. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. We're trying. At the end, we can only ask people. I just had a call with Coursera, and I expressed them that we need their help in promoting this. They're going to look into it and see what they can do. But at the end, we can only do what we can do. I try to promote it on all sorts of. But let's just make one thing clear. What we're doing is not easy, by the way. Okay, let's not kid ourselves. A lot of people are just not going to take the time to do what we're doing. So we just have to understand that if this was that easy, then everybody would be on this call. And what we're finding out is that, Julie has spent a lot of time, and we're going to find out when we get to the next segment that how much time did she spend to get to that speech. A lot of people are just not going to spend the time. Like, we all did our homework to come on this show, and other people are not going to improve because they're just not putting in the time. So yes, we would like them to come, but I want them to come knowing that this is going to be work. This is not just something you just join and just you can watch it anytime. But if you want to participate like way Julie, Lathesh, and Samyan and I are participating, it's going to require some effort on your part. Otherwise, it's not going to help you much. So let's not lose track of that, okay? At this point, I'm going to take a quick break, and then we'll move to the next segment. Okay, welcome to Speech Talk Live, episode 11. We're going to move to segment number 2. And in this segment, we are going to review a speech that Julie Finkelstein has been working on it for quite some time. And it's about the time we give her our feedback. She's kindly offered her speech for us to give her feedback. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to let Julie kind of talk us about the speech and the process on how she got to the point. And one of the things I told Julie is that don't make it perfect, because then you could spend so much time. At some point, you have to say, okay, I've put enough time. Now it's time for me to get a feedback so that I can then take that feedback and decide whether I need to make any improvement here, there, and then move from there. So at this point, I want Julie to kind of talk about her journey on how she got to the point of giving her speech, and then we can ask her about what she thinks she did well and what are some of the things that she thinks she could do better, and then let her ask us what feedback she's looking from all of us now that we have seen it. So Julie, why don't you take over?
Well, thank you. Thank you, Jay, Lathesh, and Somi, and So just as a prefix is, I have spent over 30 years in IT and over 20 years in the area of health, body, meditation, consciousness. And I'm not 100 years old. Some of it was overlapping. I started doing this introduction to meditation speech first as an impromptu speech. And I have this fundamental belief that success is inside us. It's like a seed. And we need to cultivate it and take care of it so that it can blossom. And part of success is manifesting that which brings us joy, not just, but also that's benefit the world. And you can also be profitable. So out of that process, I wanted to talk about meditation. And this being an informative speech, I wanted not to convince anybody to do meditation, but to transfer some of the basic skill sets so that it's available universally. So one of my practice models, and I don't know if when it will come to, is open source for individuals. So this tool will be free and available to everybody, but that it's a possible profit opportunity for me if I can produce a product and offer it to corporations. In the theme of success is already there, whether it's for a corporation or for an individual, and we want to unleash that, open that flower up. So in doing the speech, I got some feedback during impromptu speech, and I submitted it, and Jay said, well, why don't you work on it some more? So after many iterations and copious feedback from many of you, and some of you didn't give me feedback, but the presence, just knowing that we have a community supported me. So that's how I got to the speech. I presented it, I redid it, I presented it. Actually, I sneaked 3 versions of it into the peer review process, and this one is not even there yet. In that process, I did solicit feedback from my support group, my study buddy, Marius, which is in this class, and I got 20 feedbacks, 20 improvement suggestions. So I cannot say that I have fully integrated them all. However, I do think that the speech has incrementally moved into a much better state. So the paradox of it is, before I joined public speaking, I thought my speaking ability was a 7 out of 10. Having done the speech, I discovered I was probably more like 2 out of 10. And hopefully this speech will be at a level of like 6 out of 10. So with this, I'll turn it over back to Jay. Thank you.
Okay, so Julie, the first question is the audience, right? So let me just ask you this question. Who is the audience that you're trying to reach with this speech?
Yeah, so the audience is basically you guys and people in the class who have some awareness that they know meditation is good for them, but they don't do it. So there are barriers to people doing it. So the goal of this is just to remove the barriers.
Right. So is this a speech that, I mean, right now you're still going through iteration, but at some point you want to formally put this on YouTube for a much wider audience. Is that correct?
Yes. And also using it almost like as an educational packet that I can offer to anybody who's interested, and as a preliminary introduction to possibly, like, I don't know if I'll get there, but corporate programs, you know, you'll be like a segment of that.
Right.
Now I also would like to figure out how to introduce it into conversations. So.
Right. So Julie, what kind of feedback are you looking from us? What specific questions do you want us to? What kind of feedback do you want us to give you?
Anything's fine. I will ask you to limit it to 2 suggestions each person, because that will help me to figure out what you think is most important for me, and help me to be able to integrate that.
Okay, so I'll go first. Okay, so I think your content for this speech was very good. I understood it right from the beginning. The way you explained the body, the breath, and the mind. That part I thought was very well done. You spent equal amount of time on each one of them, so it wasn't like one was weighted much heavier than the other, which I thought was very effective. Uh, the other part is that in the middle you look quite relaxed. The only thing that I think you may want to take a look at in this speech that when you record it formally is the introduction. I think you had some notes in the beginning. I'm not sure whether that was needed or not. I just don't know whether that was a nervousness or not, because there wasn't anything there that you needed. And I liked the way you gave the flow was very good. The way you introduced the topic with what you're going to talk about, then you did that, and then your summation was very good too. The only thing I would say is that the introduction could have been a little stronger. It just was. I was looking for you to capture my attention, and I think that you may want to look into that and see what you can do to capture one's attention right from the beginning. Otherwise, the overall the content was great, and the delivery was another thing I would say. Maybe I'm giving you more than two at this point. I would like you to see a little bit more relaxed. Okay. I don't know if it's the format, because I think the content was great, and at times you were very relaxed, but at other times I didn't see that you were that relaxed. So take a look at it. Those are my observations, looking at your speech a couple of times. I'll let Lathesh, Soumyan and Lathesh go next. Lathesh?
Thank you.
Lathesh, you want to go next?
Yeah. Hi, Jay. Yes, Julie, I think the topic itself was quite good, and it actually it was meant for audience like those most of us who are caught in the regular lifestyle, in the current lifestyle, which really gives us no time to really think about sitting for a few minutes and just spending some time doing meditating. So from the feedback angle, the topic was quite good. And I like the concept specifically about the one which you talked about, how when we are trying to be silent and we try to focus on something, our mind doesn't stop at one particular point. It just keeps moving from one place to another. We go into the past, we go into the future. It doesn't come into the present mode. So you gave the example of a pendulum which is moving from one side to other. So that was a good example to bring for that particular idea. So overall, the topic itself was quite, it was something that would gather the audience. So, gather the attention of the audience. The only improvement I suggest is probably the body language can be a bit more natural. I think the hand movements in between that could be it seemed like you are playing it out. It could be made more natural style. Otherwise, the topic and the way you started it off, like you said, this is my favorite topic. That means that that the audience gets to know that you have some background, you have researched on the topic, and you know what you're going to talk about. So that was an immediate, for me, it was a connector, because you have some idea about the topic. And the second is you said about stress. I think most of us go through this particular area of stress, which is part of our day-to-day life activity. So that also helped me to connect to the topic immediately. And at the end, when you mentioned that thanking you all for all the discussions, whether you give feedback or not, your presence supports me. That was a very, emotional dialogue, and that really put the hook on the entire topic. So that's from me. Thanks, Julie. Over to you. Okay?
Thank you.
Yes, Soumyan?
Yeah. Julie, I think the point that you mentioned, that your audience is those who know about a little bit about this meditation, but really not taking up that. More than that, I would say those who are potentially stressed should be your audience, because you are actually explaining what meditation can do. So those, I mean, you are really not addressing those who don't know. You are addressing those who, I mean, you're not addressing those who know. You're actually addressing those who don't know. So that's the way I think the whole thing was structured. Okay. Second is, I like the idea that you had that this is more like an open source thing, that you want to publish something for free, get some effect, get some lot of improvement, and then package it to a corporate environment. I do see a lot of software which is starting off as open source thing. A lot of startup companies, small guys, they develop a software in some particular brand name, make it open source. Perhaps they get a lot of feedback after giving it away as freeware. They're getting a lot of feedback, and then after some time they release an improved version as a small paid version. Okay, so this is something I have seen happen. I used some such freeware, which later became a priced product. Okay, so that's a good idea. I also seen even something in data mining as a very popular product, one of the popular data mining products. Till about a year back, it was open source and free. Okay, so this year it is a price product. Okay. Then the other idea is, I think you are initially limiting your feedback session to, I mean, just about 4 or 5 of us. I think to get the feedback from more number of people is actually a very important thing for you, to get a variety of feedback so they can improve. So that's why I was also urging that you should not go on trying to fine tune your thing further with the limited number of people's feedback. Also, then we will have some kind of bias, and then you need a wider audience to talk about it. Whatever improvement you showed, if you had to post your first video on this and the last video on this, it would almost look like the examples which Professor McGarity was showing, in the class, where somebody is asked to make a speech and then he gives a feedback and then there is an improved version. So you can very clearly see a contrast on that. Okay, so you can. I mean, I don't know. It takes a little bit of courage to come forward and post both of them. If you can do that, it will make a tremendous amount of change. Okay, I'm sure you have done a lot of improvement. In fact, one of the things I wanted to say is, in your earlier videos, etc., perhaps you are very, very, serious and sort of too, calm and quiet. You perhaps, increase the amount of energy that you brought in by, maybe you did a lot of excessive amount of hand motion, etc. But then you brought in a sea change in a kind of energy level that you expressed through your video. In fact, one of the observations I was making is, in this discussion, the way you are talking was in a much more relaxed manner about the same topic than you were in your video itself. In your video, you still were a little more conscious. Here, you're truly having a conversation style. Okay, so that's something I just wanted to observe. That's all I have to say as a feedback. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. This is what. Oh, Jay, can I continue?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so this is Jay invites me to look at the introduction, how to be more attracting of audience, and also look at the delivery, how to be more relaxed. From Lathesh, I got the idea that the content was aimed at normal people and living the normal life. And, you thought that was appropriate, and that again look at the body language. And relaxation. And then Somian mentioned that I need to be more relaxed, but he noticed that my energy was up. And yes, I actually I was sharing this in private with you guys. I am now doing a shouting exercise early in the morning. So when I'm doing treadmill, part of my practice in Zen is a Rinzai Zen, which is the school I was with was actually for the martial artists. And so, excuse the word, but it's a hard ass of the hard ass school of Buddhism. And so part of our practice was just release that energy. So I picked that practice up and I'm doing that. And I'm continuing to do that. So thank you, Somian. And also you suggested that I get more feedback from a wider audience, and I appreciate that very much.
Yeah, so Julie, that was very good. I want to thank you for sharing your speech. And the other thing I want to point out is that if you have more feedback, I know we don't have a lot of time, keep giving it to her. So this is not the end of it, because the
Yes.
more feedback you give her, there are certain things you may not have had a chance to say. And the whole point here is so that she knows about it, that based on, because I think the feedback we're giving is going to be very valuable. The other thing I want to point out to you, Julie, is I'm going to a little bit to not disagree with what Somin is saying. You don't want to get a lot of feedback. You want to get feedback from people who are going to take the time to give you good feedback, right? Because otherwise you could get the wrong kind of feedback, which may not be that useful. You can ask for it, right? But I want to give feedback from people like us who are actually doing speeches. And this comes back to the next speech that we're going to look at with Brene Brown, what she says. So it kind of like segues nicely into our next topic. So at this point, I'm going to take a brief pause, and then we'll move to the next segment. So again, Julie, thanks a lot for sharing your speech.
Thank
And
you,
we
everybody.
really appreciate your courage. And I think this is going to really help you become a confident and good speaker.
Yes, thank you. I already feel like I've made quantum leaps.
Yeah, you should be. You should be proud of yourself.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome to Speech Talk Live. We're going episode 11. We're moving to segment number 3. And in this segment, I have chosen a speech that was given by, a very famous speaker named Brene Brown. She's a professor at University of Texas, and I came to know her from one of her TED Talk, like most of these. Nowadays, that's how you get to know these people. And she had given a speech. I don't know if she's given 1 or 2 speeches, but she gave one speech on vulnerability, and that went viral. And I think it's one of the top 10 TED Talks of all time. So in this one, she is giving a speech to people that are creative. I think the people that are artists who do make things, right? In a way, we are creative. When we give a speech, that's a creative act. And she brings about an interesting topic about how do you conquer your fear, and especially how do you deal with people who are your critics, because there are going to be people who are going to criticize you. And she basically uses this one quote. It's a very famous quote from President of the United States, Theodore Roosevelt, and it's a quote it's a speech that he had given. Now it's commonly known as a man in the arena. And what he's saying is that that people are going to, whenever you do something, people are going to criticize you. But unless you are in the arena, you're going to expect that. That's part of the that's part of the game. Once you get in the arena, you're going to get criticized. But that shouldn't prevent you from getting into the arena. So she's kind of using that quote to describe how to deal with that. And one of there are 3 things that she talks about, which I think you might have all picked up. One is, of course, you have to show up. So that's vulnerability. When we do this show, we are kind of vulnerable because I do put it on YouTube and everybody can see it. So we're kind of doing what she is saying. We are vulnerable, and we are coming on this show. It's not going to go well all the time. Some of it is kind of improvisational. We are kind of speaking off the cuff. Some of it we're prepared, some of it we're not. But we're showing up. We show up all the time. And that's one of the things that she talks about. The other thing that she talks about is that when you do show up like we are, people are going to criticize us. That's just the way it goes. That's part of the game. If you don't want to show up, then nobody's ever going to criticize you. So, when Lathesh and Julie just recorded her speech, and that's part of the thing. You're going to get criticized, and you can't be afraid of that. But the third point she makes is exactly what I was referring to in the last segment, is that she says that if you are not getting in the arena and getting your butt kicked, then I don't want to hear from you. Because why am I listening to you when you yourself is not putting yourself out there, being being criticized for what you're doing? That if you are putting yourself out there, then your criticism is very valuable to me because you know exactly what I'm going through. And I thought that was a very important point that she made. As far as her speech is concerned, I like the speech a lot because it's almost like she's speaking to you one-on-one. It's very conversational. She's enjoying herself giving the speech, and it has a lot of content in it. There's a lot of content, rich content in this speech, but she does it in a very entertaining way. It's done in a very conversational way that you kind of follow what she's saying. And also I like the way she introduces her speech by saying like how frightened she was. And I thought that captured my attention, that this is a lot of people go through when we have to give a speech. We want to try to get, our first thought is to get out of giving a speech. We don't want to put ourselves in an uncomfortable situation. And I thought that theme kind of was like, that built on it, right? That you have to do it, right? That's part of being a creative. That's when you're doing something creative, you have to put yourself out there, otherwise nobody ever notices you. And unless you're doing that, you have to overcome that. People are going to criticize it. You're going to get your butt kicked. But then you have to also know whose criticism you're going to. And criticism is fine. Like we give feedback. We tend to criticize. But when we're criticizing any of our speeches, it's coming from love, actually, because we want you to get better. A lot of times people are criticizing you not because they're doing out of love. They might be doing out of spite because they might be jealous. They might have their own agenda. They might not know you. They're not trying to understand what you're going through. So I thought that that the way she is showing herself being vulnerable, and if you look at that speech, she is very vulnerable in that speech because she's putting herself out there, and the speech is about that. How do you overcome your vulnerability? So overall, I thought this was a very good speech. I liked the content. I liked the way she delivered it. And I like the way she's actually enjoying herself speaking. And she's making a very important point that this is what you have to do. She herself is an example of how you have to put yourself out there and not worry about the critics. But they're going to be out there, and you're just going to have to deal with it in your own way and then keep doing it. So that's overall my thought of it. So, Julie, you want to go next?
Sure.
Julie, you just muted your line. You have to unmute it.
I'm sorry. Thanks, Jay. I found her speech very powerful. Actually, I think fear is a very fundamental human experience, human emotion. And actually, Jay, you have written an article on overcoming fear, and you've invited me to talk about that. And so I will do that. And so this is a plug for that. When I look at the rubric, there's three things that we look at: invention, organization, and delivery. And in this speech, I just want to look at her organization a little bit because it's not so simple or linear. So so she starts off talking about wanting to get a pink eye so she could avoid the speech. She didn't even use the word fear, right? And then she went into fear and how people were. But she kept on coming back to fear, right? And she kept on coming back to what happens, like other people will attack you, and that's fear. They asked her to dress in black, and that's fear. And then her own resistance, and then her overcoming that. So in a way, when I look at the structure, in traditional database design, there's the hierarchical step-by-step. There is the network. You take an idea and you relate it to everything. And then there's the relational where the idea permeates everything, right? To me, this is a very granular speech in the sense that that idea is in every sentence, in every word. and her presence is what unites that. And I found that organization a little bewildering in the beginning because it's like she's all over the place. But I think it's also genius and sublime in the sense that we know who she is and we know what she stands for, and we already know that because it's that, that's what it's going to talking about. So for me, this whole speech was actually more experiential than rational, and I really appreciate that, even though it took me a little bit more effort to tune into what she's saying. So that's my analysis of her speech. And so her organization was not linear, but either relational, I would say relational. So I just want to point that out, that it's not a traditional organization at all. So
Excellent.
thank you.
Yeah, excellent. Lathesh?
Yeah, thanks, Jay. From my perspective, from the talk, it looked like Brene seemed to be a very confident speaker, and she's well prepared for this particular talk. Her speech was quite clear, and she was giving a very pleasing appearance. She was smiling almost throughout the talk. She had a smile on her face, which kind of made it watchable, and we were able to connect. And in fact, she was able to connect with almost all the audience there. The moment she introduced a lot of humor throughout the talk, there were humor put across in bits and pieces, and she gave examples from her own family background. Like she showed posters when she was a small child to being a teenager, a wild teenager, from where then she came out to be married and settled, etc. So when it's like the audience normally, it's a general human tendency that when some things which are personal are shown, it keeps the audience hooked to that particular talk. So that was another way of bringing a topic in a very interesting way. That otherwise it was a structured talk. She introduced the concepts of being ashamed and scarcity, comparing to your peers, etc. And then the fourth point about being a parent or a very important person who was actually the most important critic in your life. So you need to look at these particular 4 points, which she brings out very nicely in this talk. But at last, she says that just reserve a seat in your daily life for this particular critic who is anyway going to criticize you. You need to acknowledge, but you need not probably act on each and every feedback given by anybody. So that's how she has closed the entire topic about being vulnerable to all this criticism that you might receive. So that's about it. Thanks, Jay. Over to you.
Yeah, Samin, any comments?
Yeah, I have a few points to make. I have perhaps gone through this video about 3 times. On 2 occasions, I shut it down at around 6th minute. And today I went perhaps up to the 9th minute or so. I still have not seen that fully. But the first occasion, I really couldn't understand what exactly she is going to talk about. I didn't even understand what is that she's getting around. She talked of her being a researcher. She talked of creativity, but then there was the topic headline also said something about critics. So I really could not relate. Okay, so I'm sorry about that, but then that's how I struggled. So I turned it off after 4 minutes because I really didn't find it. The second time again, the same kind of thing happened. But the third time, I went beyond the 4th minute. And in fact, it's after the 4th minute, she comes to say that she's going to talk about something that changed her life. And then goes on to narrate those 3 key points. I fully understood and appreciated those 3 key points. And, I thought it was a wonderful thing. I am yet to watch the full thing because I just did this before the session this evening. I started this evening as a last-ditch attempt. I didn't want to, come and say, look, I could not understand it at all. But then those 3 points are beautiful. Okay, I was immediately reminded of my own certain experiences. when I started making YouTube videos, and I was trying to experiment with various techniques. Essentially, I tried to create some Japanese language videos. I mean, videos teaching Japanese language just to practice my ability to make a tutorial, video-based tutorial. It was an expendable topic for me. As far as the topic is concerned, if I earn a bad reputation, it just didn't matter for me. I had a lot of technical flaws and things like that. I went on to improve on that. But then towards the 40th video or something, one fellow made, I had very, very few negative comments. Somewhere around the 40th video, one fellow started attacking me left and right on in the comments column. In YouTube particularly, comments columns are the most demotivating. They can be very demotivating. In the internet itself, generally comments can be very sarcastic and very bad. But in YouTube particularly, in the early days, you would not use your own name. Okay, anonymity was assured in YouTube. It was later that when they merged it with the G+, that the anonymity part of it was removed. But as an anonymous person, the way people comment is very, very harsh. So those comments really put me off, and in fact, I stopped at the 45th video. Even though that was only an experiment, I just could not proceed beyond the 45th video. I got bogged down. I felt so bad that I got criticized and things like that. So in fact, when I recall these three sessions, look, I was vulnerable. I was experimenting. I was posting videos on a subject. Okay, I was very much vulnerable, but still I did that. Then this is how it was, and I should have been ready to get my ass kicked. I was not. Okay, so the moment I started getting kicked, I sort of lost all my confidence and things like that. Okay, so that's the second point is something where I failed. And the third point is, if somebody is not criticizing me and things like that, then perhaps I'm not making any profound statement. I really am not. Maybe in a tutorial like this, it didn't matter. But then if I were to go and talk about some other subject, something where I make a persuasive talk, etc., I should expect people to criticize, because passionate subjects like that are definitely going to attract people who have a different counter opinion. So even in comments columns, etc., I do write comments in a pseudonym under news articles. So whenever I write, I say my very frank opinion. I try to make my criticism as polite language as possible, but nevertheless, I don't spare the person whom I am criticizing. I criticize fairly aggressively, but then I do it with a pseudonym. Okay, so whatever I was reacting negatively is something that I keep doing. Online, I do that. Only thing is, I can say that look, I don't use some abusive language. I still use a polite language. When I criticize, I feel that it is my right to criticize. Okay, so I would assume that if I am saying something, other people also may similarly feel that it is they have the right to criticize me, and I should take it equanimously. I think it was a very great lesson that this video taught me. I'm yet to go through the 22 minutes of it. I will do that after the event. Thank you.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah, but that's the thing, Somin, that when you did your videos, that's exactly what she's saying. You put yourself out there, and you're vulnerable, right? Because you create it. Because if you don't want to be criticized, then don't do anything. Like a lot of times, Lathesh keeps saying that he wished there were more people that would join us, but that's the whole point. That a lot of people are not going to create because they don't want to be criticized, and unless you create, you can't get better, right? That's part of the whole process, and that's difficult. Like, I'll just give you a case in point. Like, sometimes I go to Amazon and look at book reviews, and what always ticks me off is when I see like 1 star. Now, somebody who has given a lot of thought in writing a book, it can't be a 1 star. Right? There's a lot of work that went into that, right? I can see maybe 3 stars, but not 1 star. So typically, when I see a lot of 1 stars and 2 stars, and you're going to get that, those are the people who are not really giving fair criticism. They just are. They have their own agenda, or they're just out of spite. Like, if I read a book and if I found at least 1 tip that was useful, to me that's a 3 star. Okay, and in many cases, people just think like they're giving like gold to people if they're giving 5-star. Hey, if the speech is good, if you got something out of it, give it a 5-star. What's the big deal, right? Let the person, and then there are others who just will not give. They're always giving 5 stars. Like I sometimes wonder, like even William Shakespeare couldn't get all 5 stars, and here some of these authors are getting all 5 stars, and I'm kind of, doubtful, like how is that even possible? William Shakespeare must be rolling in his grave, like, wait a second, I got criticized when I was writing all those plays and comedies and stuff. So it is what it is. But one thing that Brene Brown said that was also very important, and I think she said this at the end, that one seat you leave is yourself, right? Because you're your biggest critic, and that's something we all need to realize too. And that's one of the things that I was telling Julie, that don't try to make your speech perfect, because then what you're doing is you have to be your own critic, but you don't want to be your own critic to the point where you're just not going to put anything out there. At some point, you have to put something out there. Like I read that in writing, I think one author said that you can only edit. You cannot edit a blank page. And a lot of people are always afraid to write because they feel like, well, if I write, I'll get criticized. Well, you have to write something, and then you can edit it. You can always make it better. So I thought that speech had a lot of useful, interesting, useful information that we could take away from what we do here. That's why I included this speech. And there was a lot to learn from it, because we all have that doubt, because we are kind of vulnerable. When you're on the show, you're visible, people know you, people are probably stopping you in the streets at Bangalore and Bombay. Hey, I saw you on that Speech Talk Live. I got some certain things I didn't like about it. I don't know if that happens to you or not. It happens to me all the time,
It happens to you in Bangalore all the time.
Well, anyway, any closing thoughts, Julie, Soumyan? So I think this was good speech. I think there was a lot to learn from this speech, because we can all relate to it. Because I put a lot of stuff on YouTube. Lathesh, you put your stuff on YouTube, and everything we do is on YouTube. So I thought this was very relevant, because a lot of times you're going to get criticized, and part of it is that you just have to accept it and just move on, and just not let that paralyze you into doing things. You got to keep doing it, because you're not going to please everybody.
Absolutely.
There is some saying, I think, which says, if you don't go wrong if you don't do anything. I think that you also said that a short while ago. I think that's very much true. If you really don't do anything, you'll never do anything wrong. Okay, so but then unless we venture out and do something and correct our mistakes, we will never become someone worthwhile listening to.
Exactly.
Yes, thank you. One more thing, totally off topic, but thank you, Soumyan, for posting into the Google community. Professor Matt joined the community and said we have a lot of great resources. So.
Yeah, so just one of the things that I asked Marie Chelberg when she was on the call last week, and I said, if Coursera can help promote this course so we can get more people to join. And typically what I do is whenever I review a speech, I always include the link of one of the episodes of Speech Talk Live. And I said, look, if you want to know more, here's an example of, you can learn something, and you can even join this community, and etc. And if you have a speech you want us to review, you can do that. And so far, nobody's ever taken me up on that. Like I get like emails back and forth, but then they never really send me any kind of speech. So I know, Julie, you've been doing that. You've been promoting the show, and I always and once the show is done, I always put it on the forum. So it is what it is. We are trying to get the word out, but at some point, people like Lathesh, you joined us, right? Because you just said, hey, let me go and see, and it's worked. So at some point, people have to get out of their comfort zone, and that's what this is. At some point, and this is like, we're not even that bad, we're pretty nice to everybody here. But at some point, you have to take that initiative to get out of your comfort zone, and that's something we can only ask for them. They're going to have to take that action on their own. So that's any. Let's close out the show. Julie, you want to?
Great show. Thanks so much. Great to see you guys. Have a great week. Thank you. And thank you for all the great feedback.
Yeah, Julie, thanks a lot for your speech. Lathesh? And again, thanks for your update.
Yeah, thanks Jay, thanks Julie, and thanks Somin. I really enjoy this session. This 1 hour every week is like a real good, I would say a good tonic for me. And yeah, happy weekend to everyone. Thank you.
Thanks. Somin?
Thank you all. Thank you all. It was an enjoyable talk today.
Okay,
Bye.
guys. Thank you everybody for participating. And at this point, we're going to close out the show and enjoy the weekend. And we'll see you next week. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.